I'm Nela Dunato, artist and designer, and today I want to share a sketchbook flip for a project I did back in November. Now, in case you don't know, November is Art Everyday Month, and Art Everyday Month is a challenge started by an artist named Leah about 6 years ago, and people from all over the world are connecting through this challenge and creating art every single day of November, every year. So I took part last year and the year before. So this year I decided to make a theme challenge, which I ended up calling a month of fairies. So I drew a fairy a day, every single day, from November 1st, 2014 to November 30th, 2014. And a lot of them I did in this sketchbook. So 24 out of 30 artworks total. And this is what I want to share with you today. So this little sketchbook, that's a handbook travelogue journal. I got it as a gift and I ended up liking it a lot. So it has this little slightly textured yellowish paper that's sort of thick, so it's nice. I can recommend it definitely. And I'm really fond of this square shape. And I can't wait to share the art with you, so stick around. And if you want to see these artworks in a little higher quality, I have them all on my blog, and I will share the links below the video so you can check out those blog posts as well, and some other works that were not included in the sketchbook. So here's the sketchbook. Let's dive in. This is sort of the logo of my project, a little lettering and some root tree-like ornaments done in a brush pen. And then I did this little fairy and with a fine liner. So I used this graphic on my blog and on different places where I posted this project. This is the first one. She doesn't have a name. I started experimenting with some different techniques that I haven't been using for a long time. So I use ballpoint pen, watercolor, and colored pencils on a lot of these drawings, as you will see later. So I first did this watercolor wash just for this background, and then drew over it with a pen, and then colored in the details with a pencil. So I kind of like this one. This is one of my favorites from the whole project. This is also one of my favorites. That's done completely with watercolor, with just one color, the Payne's gray, and it has a really nice rich gray color. It's called the Water Fairy, and it was inspired by a legend about this fairy who was in love with a man, and they were sort of hanging out, and it ended up that he married another woman, and she really got furious and ruined their wedding. Basically, the bride died and the groom was never to be found again. So the lesson of the story is, I guess, don't mess with fairies. This one was also done with watercolor, ballpoint pen, and colored pencils. I wanted to do something a little creepy, grotesque, but it ended up looking cute. This one with the broken wings, which is kind of a symbol that's repeated in my art over and over again, either wings growing or wings being broken. I'm not going to go too deep into it. This is just watercolor and ballpoint pen. This is a Dryad awakening. So Dryads are basically Greek forest fairies, and this is one emerging from the tree trunk. This is Birth of a Flower Fairy. So in Croatian legends, or probably a lot of Slavic legends, these little flower fairies are emerging from the early spring flowers, and basically you're not supposed to pick those flowers because you're killing the fairies that way. This is a brush pen sketch with a little more ornaments. This is fan art for the cartoon The Secret of Kells. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's gorgeous and the story is quite nice also. And this is one of the main characters, Aisling. She is, I suppose, an Irish fairy, and with the little kitty cat named Pungur Ban. The style is not really what the original artist was like, but I try to, you know, do my best. This is a mischievous fairy. So a lot of stories about fairies are like, you know, they're helping humans, they're really nice, they're like little angels of the forest, basically. But there are a lot of legends, especially what I've found in Slavic mythology, where fairies are out to get you, or they're just trying to pull pranks on you. So this is one that stole someone's keys. But, you know, there are stories of fairies stealing children or luring men into the woods and killing them. So fairies are not all good, basically. Or maybe there are like good fairies and bad fairies and medium fairies, like humans, I suppose. This is Rusalka. She's from Russian folklore. So Rusalka, they're water fairies living in rivers and lakes, and they're not allowed to move too far away from their river or lake, because if their hair gets dry, they die. So they have to keep their hair wet the entire time, and they have this really long red hair, which is how they got their name. The name is, I guess, red something. This is also done with watercolor and ballpoint pen. These are the fates. So the fates, I suppose, are present in a lot of different folklore, but in Slavic folklore, there are the three fairies that come at the birth of a child, and they give him, you know, some good fortune, and they basically predict what their life is going to be like. And one of the fairies is measuring the length of the child's life. So these are the headphone tanglers. So, you know, I guess if you ever had headphones, you know what they look like when you pull them out of your pocket. So this is just one of my theories about what happens when the headphones are in your pocket. This is just one different view of what a modern fairy might look like. She doesn't have a name, but I guess fairies have different hairstyles and can have body art too. This is a forest spirit. So I did more like this blurry, atmospheric image done with watercolor and some white pencil for this shiny effect. This is done with the paper cutting technique. So the background is painted with watercolor and the front page is cut with a little scalpel. And I don't have a lot of experience with paper cutting, so this was a lot harder than I expected. I only maybe did it a few times in my life, but overall I'm happy with how it turned out. So this one is called the Fairy of Velebit. Now this may be familiar to people who are from Croatia. There's this really cheesy patriotic song about this Fairy of Velebit. I have no idea what the story is, so I just know the song. And basically my boyfriend was teasing me when I was going to draw her and all this very serious, so I just said, oh hell, I'm going to draw. And she is like made from a rock, because these are like huge rocky mountains. So I suppose a rock fairy would be appropriate. This was more or less a quick one with watercolor. Some kind of autumn spirit. This is a water nymph. So I tried to go for a submerged looking look with light hitting from the above and so on. You be the judge of how well I managed to do that. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. This one is named Kosienka, so that's a character from a story, from a fairy tale written by a Croatian author, Ivana Belic-Mažuranic. So she's dead by now. That story was written 100 years ago. And I wasn't really in the mood for drawing at all that day, so I'm not really happy with how it turned out. But I suppose this was my first try at drawing this character. Later I did another design that I'm much more happier with. So that's watercolor and ballpoint pen as well. This is another paper cut. I call it the Moon Fairy. This one I did, so I left the background page blank and painted the paper cut one. And this was also a really interesting exercise because, as I mentioned, I'm not really good at paper cutting yet. But it was a nice experiment. This one I called a winter guardian. So a lot of legends say how the fairies sleep during the entire winter, and like none of them are awake when the nature is asleep. But I imagine that this probably wouldn't be possible, so I made this character who is watching over the entire nature as all her sisters are asleep, and then when they wake up she goes and sleeps through the spring and summer part of the year. I used watercolor and a pastel, soft pastel here, to get this misty effect. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. So this was an experiment. I wasn't really in the mood for drawing, I suppose, so I tried to make this letter F into an interesting looking fairy shaped form. So that was done with a brush pen. This is fairy in hibernation. So you may have seen the one that gets born from a flower. This is like before this. So she's hibernating in this root part of the plant, covered by snow and waiting for the flower to bloom. It's also done with watercolor and ballpoint pen. And this is the last one. Yeah, that's La Fée Verte, or the green fairy. As you may know, she's actually the symbol of absinthe, the alcohol that a lot of French artist dudes were drinking heavily during the, I don't know which, 18th century, I suppose. And it was always the green fairy on the bottle, so that's really, we even have some brands of these alcohol that are actually called the green fairy or the green sorceress, or she's been called a lot of names. So I decided to make an homage to this fairy also. And it turned out one of the better drawings from the book, done with ballpoint pen and watercolor. So I hope you enjoyed this little view of my little sketchbook. And if you are interested in participating in the Art Everyday Month project yourself, I would encourage you to do so. It's a great way to meet new artist friends and of course to grow artistically, because drawing every day for a month, it's a challenge. And I have to say I learned a lot of things doing this challenge. So if you're up for it, arteverydaymonth.com, I think. Check out the link below the video and check out my website with more art and more paintings and more fairy and fantasy looking stuff at neladunato.com. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.